Had you been with the same group of people since Africa, or had you been broken up and moved about? The prisoners of war you was with, the guys you were with?
No, I was with those 45 most of the time. We did get a split once, but we got together again. And the strange thing was that I came home with some of them. I got them back. Now, I could speak a fair amount of German at that time, so I was very useful to the Germans in getting their orders directed to the men, and I was also very useful in making sure that the Germans didn't take it out of us too much. You see, if in camps where the prisoners didn't understand the language, the Jerrys made hell on earth for them. You see, well, they tried it out on us, but I was up to it, and I'd been a prisoner longer than my mates, so I knew the ropes a bit, and I used to answer the Germans back. So we're not doing that. We'll do it our way.
Had you started a union?
But yeah, well, I got kicked and beaten and all sorts of. I got whipped in the face with a horse whip for answering a German officer back. But it didn't matter because I got my way.
Yeah.
With them, and it proved useful, but it was a rather trying time.
Were the POWs a big asset for the German kind of war machine at that point? I suppose it was coming. What year are we in now?
That's coming up to 43, 44.
Okay, so
things were going bad for the Germans on the Russian front.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that some of the things we did, little bits of sabotage, had an effect in because other units doing the same. We smashed every electric light bulb we could see.
Oh, really?
By twisting them.
Yeah.
They didn't look as if they were damaged, but they didn't work anymore. Every one we could see.
Yeah. So just these small things that the Allied POWs were doing just to make it a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
Did you
cut telephone wire?
Really?
To do all sorts.
At this point, was it like, well, if we get shot, we get shot? What was the feeling like? Or did you feel like you were part of the war effort?
Yeah, yes. We weren't being brave British soldiers, but we were doing our little bit. We couldn't do much, but what little bit we did often gummed up the works for them. For instance, when I was in charge of those 45, I used to, if someone said, I've got a bit of a sore throat coming on, and have you got any old salt so I can have a gargle? So we'd have some crystal salt. So I would say to the commandant, we've got a throat infection in the camp. Now, they didn't like that. They were frightened of throat things because of diphtheria.
Ah, right, okay.
You see, so, right, you must take him into Dresden to the hospital and see the German MO. Well, it meant I'd have to take that man so I could speak a bit of German for him, and the guard had to go with us. And the guards, it'd be on his day off. So he'd be cursing like mad,
Yeah.
you see. That's the sort of thing we did.
Just to mess them about,
Yeah,
to empower yourself as much as possible.
Put a spike in the wheel,
Yeah.
you see. And any damage, you know, if you get hold of an electric light bulb and turn it the wrong way, you could push it up and break its seal, and it's still there.
Yeah, yeah.
So we did that everywhere we went, even when we went down to the sick bay.
How old are you now? You're about 23. Are you 23 at this time then? When you're in Dresden?
Yeah, I was 24.
24.
Yeah, and I had 45 prisoners, and they were mostly caught in North Africa and in the invasion of Italy, Sicily and Italy. They hadn't been prisoners as long as I had.
Yeah.
So,
were you hearing snippets about the war going on? Could you get bits of radio and?
well, what used to happen was that if I knew the British officer MO. Down in Dresden, on one of the main roads into the town, there was an old beer garden with an old-fashioned cinema, and it was used for housing sick prisoners. There were no beds; there was straw on the floor. If you were unwell, and went into his sick bay, you dossed down on the straw. And but I got friendly with him, Captain Lusk. He was a New Zealander, and I got friendly with him. So I used to take people occasionally on a false errand down there to see the doctor with a guard, under guard, and have a session with him, and I'd get a bit of news because he used to pick up a bit of news on the radio from the German guards. He was under guard, but yeah, one Sunday, one of my boys was very, very ill. Very ill. And he terrible pain in the stomach. And I went to we were locked in at night, of course. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock rather, I kept banging on the door for a guard to come. Eventually, he came and opened the door. What's wrong? What do you want? I said, I want the doctor. No good. I said, I want the commandant then. No good. Well, he shut the door and locked it again. But an hour later, my banging, it must have been heard all over the place. And he opened up and he took me to the commandant. And I got in the office. I said, one of my boys, Hartnell, is very ill. We need to get to Dr. Lusk down in the town. Now, the commandant said, you can't go because I can't afford a sentry to go with you. Well, there was a lot of argument over this, a lot. I said, while we're arguing with this, Herr Commandant, I said, Hartnell is very ill. And while we're arguing, he's getting worse. If he dies, his death will be on my hands and yours. He said, you can't go. You can't go. I haven't got a sentry available. Well, I suppose that was true. But I mean, in the British Army, we'd have found somebody.
Mm.
But they didn't. So I said to him, if you open the if you open the gates here, I'll walk out. I'll walk down the hill. It was about 1.5 miles. I said, I'll walk down the hill and get Helpman Captain Lusk to come. Oh, he says, it's impossible. I said, well, Hartnell dies, you and I will be responsible. And we went on like that. And I went back into my hut. He sent me off. And there we were with this fella. Oh, no, his knees up. Anyway, a sentry came into the room and said, come with me. I went into the commandant and he said to me, I have typed out a pass and which I'm going to open the gate and let you go and get Captain Lusk. But he said, you must sign this piece ticket. I said, what is it? He said, read it. And it was a promise that I would go out, I would not escape. I said, I can't sign that. Why? Your friend will die. I said, I can't sign that. I'm not allowed as a prisoner of war to sign that sort of document. I said, your German soldiers in England would not be asked to sign a piece of paper like that, and I cannot sign that paper because under the military, I can't sign. He looked at me, and I thought he was going to get his revolver out. I said, I can't sign it. I can't sign it. I won't sign it. I'm not asking permission. That I won't escape.
Mm.
He said, had you got it in mind to escape? I said, it doesn't enter into it here. I said, I cannot escape. I cannot promise not to escape. I can't sign it. He said, your friend will die. I said, well, you'll be part of the death. He said, get out. I went out to that hut. I was in a bit of a dilemma. And before I got back to my hut, a German soldier came up, called out to me, come back. I went in the office, and that commandant said to the soldier, go to the gate, unlock it. And he said to me, get on your way.
Mm.
I said, no signing, no. He said, it's there in the bin. And I walked out of that camp, down that hill, and the birds were singing. And I thought, I'm free. I'm actually outside a camp. And I walked down there and I got to that old cinema and I banged on the door And the German soldier opened the door and he nearly had a fit. He went mad. And while I said, no, just let it go. I want Captain Lusk. And I went and Lusk was having a shave. He said, where's your guard? I said, back at the camp. I've walked out. I said, the commandant's let me come out. I said, I'll tell you about it. He said, I'll get me jacket on. Come on, let's go. And we walked up the hill back to our camp. And he said, isn't it marvellous? He said, the people are saying good morning to us. Oh. Nobody's arresting us. Mm. And we got back into camp, and he decided, he got on the phone in the office, did Lusk, and they decided we got a wheelbarrow, we put a blanket in the wheelbarrow, we put Matey in it, poor boy, and we wheeled him all the way into Dresden to the Dresden Army Barracks, where they operated on him immediately, and he died on the operating table. He didn't survive. And I said to Captain Lusk, you were at the operation. Oh yes, he said, they allowed me to witness. They didn't kill him. So I said to him, what was it? He said it wasn't a duodenal ulcer. He said it was a gastric ulcer, and it had burst. Mm. I said, so all the delays helped. Well, he said they probably contributed towards it, but he said he was very ill. He said, now you've got a nice job on your hands, you've got to bury him. So I arranged with through the commandant, I arranged with a local undertaker in Dresden, and he was just like old man Steptoe, with a funny old battered hat on, and he was just like him. Later in life, I thought, I've seen you before. And I carried it, I ordered a funeral, and we had a little military funeral in a cemetery up in the pines. And some of four prisoners from his regiment we found, they carried his little coffin and we buried it. And 4 German guards came and they fired shots over the grave. Mm. They're good at funerals, the Germans. And so we left Billy. When we had to get out of Dresden, when the Russians arrived on the outskirts of Dresden, we had to walk over the hills into Czechoslovakia, and a long walk, and living off the land with the guards. We're under guard. And, well, to cut the long story short, we roamed the countryside to get away from the Russians, but they caught up on us. And the German guards threw their uniforms away and their rifles away, and we were free.
Before we get there, because Dresden, when I hear the words Dresden, I think of a real stain in our history, which is the bombing of Dresden.
Oh yeah, we were there when we were there the night it was bombed.
Just for those that don't know, because it doesn't really get. When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, it certainly wasn't something we spoke about in history lessons. But over a course of a couple of days, and one in particular day in February of 1945, so near the end of the war.
13th of February.
Yeah, 1945.
Yeah.
The British and the Americans dropped nearly 4,000 tons of explosive incendiary devices over
Well,
into Dresden.
on the night raid, the RAF did the night raid. They dropped tons and tons of firebombs, not 80, and but at midday the next day, about 800 flying fortresses and whatnot came. The Americans came at midday in the winter sunshine, and they dropped tons of high explosives over the fires that the RAF had started the night before. I think there were 850 British RAF planes came, and they dropped the chandeliers that lit up the place. We were working down the railway at the time. We had to escape with the guards back to our camp up the road, and we had built a temporary sort of shelter.
Can I because it's a really important part of this conversation for me, just to understand it a little bit more. That the night before, when the first kind of wave came in, the first bombing raid, they dropped the incendiary devices.
Yeah.
So essentially napalm. So,
oh no, nothing like that.
but it was enough. Sorry, I'm trying to just think of it in my head what it would be. So, but it was flames, wasn't it? It was incendiary.
Just ordinary firebombs.
Firebombs, right? Okay.
Yeah, incendiary bombs.
Yeah.
They dropped thousands of them. But no high explosive, not from the RAF that
Just
night.
fire.
Just fire. The fire bombs were bouncing off everything.
Was you there seeing it when it was happening?
Oh yes, they were in the street. You could kick them.
Yeah.
We made our way back to camp. We didn't have far to go. We went along the railway track. We couldn't go out in the road from the camp, from the where we were working on the railway that night. So we went along the track, and then scrambled up a bank and the guard was with us. We got a couple of guards with us, and they were very shirty about going back to camp because they get into trouble. So when they saw the conflagration behind us, the city bursting into flames, they realised that camp was the best place. So we went back and we knocked on the door to go in, knocked on the gate.
Did you see when the fire was taking up? Because
the whole sky was lit up.
Did it create what's called? Because I've read about it.
Yeah.
It created a firestorm, which it's essentially cold air gets sucked
the
into
Luftdruck. Yeah.
And then gale force winds start coming in because of the intensity of the fire.
Oh yeah, the firestorm. You could see it went up to the high heavens.
25,000 or up to 25,000 people died in those raids.
I would say more, even more than that.
Okay.
But that was a firebomb night. That was at 10 o'clock at night. And they were only over less than an hour. They did the job, and they flew home. And at one stage we could see the planes reflecting from the fire. You could see the bombers. The next day at midday, the hand sirens went again, and we couldn't go down into the city because it was still raging. And we suddenly saw the sky was full of aeroplanes, and they were all American. And there were 10 waves of 80 planes. It came. And they dropped high explosive all across the fires in the city. They blew the place to bits. It was a terrific raid. And Well, I suppose it came under the class of 1,000 bomber raids, about 800. And a few days later, when we were out in the fields over in Czechoslovakia, later on, when the Russians were on the way, there was a daylight raid with Americans, and they went over to the big railway junction at Pirna, which was in Czechoslovakia, actually, Bohemia.
So directly south of Dresden.
Yeah, it blocked all the road and railway into Dresden or out of it. So,
is this all around the same time? This February?
Yeah. And we were living on the land at that time. But there, we walked and walked away from the Russians, but the Germans who were guarding us, with us, they didn't realise that the Russians were encircling us. And we came to a forest one afternoon, and we got into the forest amongst the pine trees, and the German captain, who was in charge of all the prison camps in Dresden, his name was Captain Riedel, an old boy. He fought in the Great War, and he called the likes of me, leaders of the different parties of prisoners. There were about 10 of us. We stood round him, and he said, "The war is over." And we couldn't quite believe it. And he said, "By midnight tonight, the war will really be over and you will be free." Now, one of his sergeant majors, who was a bit of a swine to us, he refused to believe the war was over. And he argued with Captain Riedel. Now, for a German soldier to argue with an officer in the German army was unheard of. You never argued. If he told you to jump off the cliff of Dover, you did it. Now, this sergeant major, he was hated by us, and he hated us. And I was standing quite near him, like this, in that group. And he stood to attention, and he said to Captain Riedel, "I will not obey your command." Because Riedel had said, "By midnight you will be free and you can go your own way, make your way home." And this captain, this sergeant major said, I will not give that order to any of the prisoners. They are prisoners of war, and they will be prisoners of war to the end of time," or something, he said. And Riedel said to him, "You will obey me." And the sergeant major said, "I will not obey you." And he stood at attention in front of Captain Riedel. He said, "Shoot me. Shoot me." And Riedel got his revolver out. And this sergeant major said, "Shoot me, now," immediately. And I could see the poor old captain, he was shaking. And I put my hand out and I took his revolver out of his hand and I handed it to a young German officer. I think, "Take this." and Captain Riedel slumped down by the foot of a tree. His hat fell off, and he burst into tears. He said, "My country is finished, and I am finished." And with one of my mates, we lifted him up and said, gave him his hat and said, "Captain Riedel, you're still a German soldier, and we're British soldiers. You're still in charge of us until midnight." No, he said no. And he turned to two officers, young officers, he said, "Take me away." And they took him away into the forest. I don't know what happened to him. He certainly didn't shoot himself because his revolver. I emptied it. I shook the magazine out. I emptied it.
Was this in the May?
Hmm?
Was this May then? In the May? In the month of May? Is this when this happened?
Yes.
So it was VE Day?
It was the end of the war.
Yeah.
And there were several of us, about 10 of us, leaders of groups of prisoners, working camps, you see.
Mm.
And I said to Jimmy Ellis, one of my pals, I said, "Jimmy, let's get the boys out of here. Let's go home." And we started walking. We walked
West.
to west. And my pals said to me the next morning, we slept the night in a barn because we were exhausted. And the next morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning, we all got out and freshened ourselves under a pump. And my lads said to me, "What are we going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to walk to France." "What? It's thousands of miles." I said, "No, it's not. It is about 1,000, but I'm going to walk to France. We're free." I said, "But we're going home." I said, "It doesn't matter how long it'll take us. We get food along the way."
Mm.
And they said, "Well, the German people haven't got no food to give us." I said, "Well, we'll pinch it. We'll find it in farms and places. We'll exist." And we started walking, and we walked a long way. We got into Bavaria, just into Bavaria, and came across the American army.
Mm.
They gave us food straight away and medical supplies and all sorts. And they took us by road to Nuremberg, which was in ruins.
Mm.
And we spent a night around a big bonfire we made in a field, on the airfield. And when we dozed and woke up next morning, we looked, and the whole runway was full of Dakota aircraft.
Mm.
And we piled into those, and they flew us to Brussels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
Bit
when we
better
got
than
to
walking on
Brussels,
foot.
in Brussels we managed to get into a barracks, and we had a shower bath and cleaned up a bit, and we had some soup and sausages and whatnot, and the Yankees fed well, and we went to bed, lie down. Next morning early, we got roused up, and the Americans took us in lorries on the other side of Brussels, where the Battle of Waterloo was fought, on the big mound, over that side to an RAF depot. And they piled us into any old aircraft that was there. I got into a Lancaster bomber, and they flew us home. we landed in Oxford,